Hey everybody, Hamster Sales here with another Diablo 3 skill calculator video. Having a ton of fun making these. This is my fourth one. I'm on to the Witch Doctor, doing them in order as Blizzard has them on the skill calculator page here. And this time I decided to kind of focus on a pure damage build. I loved the Necromancer from Diablo 2. He was one of my main characters along with the Barbarian. And the Witch Doctor is, I think, pretty clearly the spiritual successor to the Necromancer from that game. And I love the idea of a Necromancer type character who is actually good throughout the entire game. Watching a lot of videos, it looks like his skills start out being effective instead of almost completely useless, much like many of the early Necromancer skills were. So that's going to be exciting. I think this might be one of the first, if not the first, characters I play in Diablo 3. Just because I'm really looking forward to some of these abilities. They seem like a ton of fun. Even more flavor, I think, than the Necromancer. So let's begin. First skill I chose was the Summon Zombie Dog skill. It's from the support tree. It's available at level 1. And you get 3 dogs right off the bat. You don't have to wait 10 levels before you get 3 minions to do your bidding for you. Right off the bat you get 3 dogs, which is an incredible improvement. Really ups the fun factor. You don't have to suffer through a terrible class through X amount of levels before you can finally start doing something effective. And the rune I chose for it is pretty awesome. As many of the Witch Doctor's runes, this one allows his dog, or turns his dogs into fiery dogs that just do persistent fire damage to anything they're in contact with, which is just incredible. Many of his runes turn his minions on fire, having looked through all of his skills. And this one just seemed incredibly cool. Many of these seem extremely fun and effective runes for the zombie dogs. This one gives them a huge amount of life leech. This one leaves an orb on the ground, a health orb on the ground when they die, which actually probably seems like far and away the least interesting and powerful rune. This one here, 70% of the damage taken is absorbed by, my damage taken is absorbed by the damaged zombie dogs. Any damage taken by the Witch Doctor, 70% of it will go to the dogs instead. I finally got that out coherently. And as always, the Obsidian rune is pretty interesting. Summoned zombie dogs get an infectious poison bite, which seems pretty cool. But of all of them, I liked the idea of my dogs being on fire the most, so I chose that one, because fiery zombie dogs is a pretty fearsome thought. The next one I chose was Firebomb. If any of you have seen this video, skill in action and gameplay videos, you know how awesome it is. He throws a fiery skull bomb at the ground that just explodes. I like the idea of an effective offensive spell for a Necromancer-like class, so I went with Firebomb. I know how awesome the animation is too. And with my rune, I chose to make Firebomb more firebomby. It says, in addition to the base explosion, create a larger blast that deals additional fire damage. So it seems like it's just going to be a secondary explosion, maybe like a wave of fire when it hits the ground. So I wanted to make my explosion more boomy. No cooldown on this one, so going to be constantly lobbing fire bombs most likely. Probably going to end up being one of the more interesting skills, one of my favorite skills. There's some pretty cool effects that you can add to Firebomb. As with most of the Witch Doctor skills, the runes are some of the most interesting I've come across in the game so far. Rather than being a real explosion, you could turn the Firebomb into kind of a ricocheting little fireball, I guess you could say, that can hit up to 8 targets, though each ball at bounce reduces the damage. We've got Pyrogeist. You can create a column of flame instead of throwing a bomb, so that kind of completely changes the whole makeup of the spell. Kind of instead gives you I don't know if it's just a single target column of flame, or whether it's kind of a single, like a firewall from the sorcerers in Diablo 2 that radiates from the Witch Doctor. I'm not really sure how that one works. I think that rune might even be on the the Diablo 3 runes animation page, so maybe I'll have to give that a look later. This one allows the skull to bounce around and explode each time, which is very cool. That was probably my second choice. That one seemed extremely cool. And then the fire pit leaves behind a pool of fire that does fire damage. Also interesting, but I decided to make my boom more boomy with the conflagration rune. And since I had some fire damage on my first 2 skills, I decided to go for Locust Swarm, a poison damage ability. This one seemed pretty cool. You get a little Locust Swarm that spreads to multiple enemies and does poison damage. Just seemed very cool to me, kind of persistent dot I can throw on mobs. Seems very helpful for a class that is going to have dogs tanking for it. So Locust Swarm just seemed to really fit well with this kind of damage-oriented build I wanted to create. And the rune I chose, it gives me tons of mana, so in addition to being a nice persistent dot, it's going to be giving me mana leech. There are some pretty interesting runes in this one. You can of course set your locus on fire, as you can with many of the runes, like I said before. And then they have other ones that kind of increase the duration, so that would make it a more effective dot overall. That was a strong consideration for me, but I like the idea of a mana generator that would kind of fuel my other spells. So it'll do some nice damage for me, and at the same time increase my overall potential for destructive power. And then I had to pick up the zombie charger. He is just an awesome skill. You send out a suicidal zombie that runs around. Let me get the text up there. That runs around and explodes in a cloud of poison damage, I think is how I've seen it in the gameplay videos, which is just incredibly cool. The whole idea is pretty amazing. I've not gone for the zombie wall, but that is another skill that's very similar. I think it's in right here, isn't it? Yeah, Wall of Zombies was just an incredible idea. I didn't go with that one. Just because I don't really necessarily like the Wall of Bone type spells that the Necromancer had in Diablo 2, but I love the flavor of a Wall of Zombies. But and for my zombie-themed spell, I decided to go for Zombie Charger. Seems like another potent weapon in my offensive arsenal. Firebomb, kind of a localized AoE. I can choose where to throw it. But with Zombie Charger, I went with the rune that gives me 8 zombies, an additional way to kind of deal AoE damage. It's going to be poison damage too, or I assume it's going to be poison damage. They mention this poison damage here, but when it changes into 8 zombies, they just mention damage that way, which would be physical damage, if I'm reading that correctly, and if they typed it correctly, which is fine too. It's another source of damage. Diablo 2 had damage immunities. I don't know if they're going to stick with the immunity theme in Diablo 3. I haven't actually read up enough on that to know, or I don't know if they've officially announced that, but there's likely to be resistances in the game, much like there was last time. So it's nice to have multiple sources of damage, and especially when that source of damage is a pack of marauding zombie chargers. That's always a lot of fun, if nothing else. And then I went with Mass Confusion for my next spell. It's the only thing I really liked from the Spirit Realm. Everything else kind of seemed not terribly interesting. I mean, they all seem like relatively good spells. Spirit Walk was one I strongly considered as an evasive ability. You can kind of walk through monsters and walls, I believe. But I went with Mass Confusion. It was there was a curse from the Necromancer had from Diablo 2 that I really liked. This one seems more effective though. Like right out of the gate, it's going to give, I assume, a good area of effect. It seems like in Diablo 3 they don't have any skills that really just suck as soon as you get them. So I'm sure you're going to be able to turn a whole room of monsters confused, especially since it has a 60-second cooldown. And it seemed pretty cool. I think there's only a chance that it will cause them to fight for you, but it's really going to thin down the number of monsters you have to engage at any given time. And the rune I chose causes monsters to be stunned for 5 seconds, up to 10 of them, if they're not affected by the initial confuse. So if I don't confuse them, then I'm likely going to stun them. That was the one I chose. Seemed pretty interesting. I kind of like this one. Devolution. Targets killed while confused have a 99% chance of spawning a zombie dog. That was pretty awesome. Unstable Realm is another great choice. I mean, it would allow me to spam it. That was one I really thought about taking. It's probably the most effective of all the runes, to be honest. But yeah, I went with the stun. So I'll just have to be sticking to using it every 60 seconds in that case. Were I playing, I might switch to Unstable Realm though, if I saw how effective this was, the ability to spam it every 4 seconds. I'm not sure. And the last skill I chose was the Gargantuan. Too cool to pass up. Summon a giant zombie to wreck everything for you. Does tons of damage. Rune I gave him causes him to enrage when engaging an elite enemy or a pack of enemies. The runes on him, not super interesting, but the fact that you get a Gargantuan zombie anyways is pretty cool. They really just augment his ability to do damage for the most part. Okay, and that's it for all my active skills. On to the passive. I found a pretty cool interaction that anybody who's played around with this no doubt has found the same thing. The first passive skill I chose was Blood Ritual. 50% of your mana costs are paid with life, effectively halving your mana cost, but you're also going to be killing yourself when you're casting spells. And to compensate for that, you also regenerate 2% of your maximum life per second. That seemed pretty amazing to me, like a very interesting mechanic. Going to be able to cast a lot more offensive stuff. Of course, I'm going to be virtually killing myself at the same time. So to interact with that, I got Death Trance. It reduces all damage taken by 20% whenever I'm below 50% maximum life. I assume that 20% damage shield would apply to damage taken while casting spells because of Blood Ritual as well. But in general, it's just going to increase my survivability. So whenever I'm down below 50% life, which may be kind of often because I'm killing myself all the time, I will take less damage. So that seemed like a sick interaction. And then to bolster my meat shields, I chose Zombie Handler. Increases the amount of zombie dogs I can have out at one time to 4, which is very cool. I'll have 4 flaming zombie dogs at any given time. And their health will be increased by 60%, as well as that of my Gargantuan. So that seemed like a very strong one to pick, considering my build. I was surprised at the ratio of the spells that affected the spirit type stuff, which of course I didn't go for, so my passive skills I think work pretty well with my build. Let me know what you think about this mechanic, especially the ability to drain your life instead of using mana for 50% of the cost of all your spells. Seems very cool. I think that's a playstyle I'd like to mess around with if I played the Witch Doctor. And as always, please let me know what you thought about this video, about my build, and thanks again for listening.